good evening to our viewers. Welcome to the Evening Review Show. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Well, tonight we're joined in studio by the Managing Director of the High Economic Intelligence, Mr. Salomo Hei. Good evening, welcome, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Matthias. Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to your viewers.
Yeah, well, it's always good to have you in the studio. Of course, as far as the economy is concerned, there's always so much to talk about. The year has just started. Namibians are wondering what is it that we should look forward to as far as the Namibian economy is concerned. Of course, happenings on the global economic arena, how do you see those things impacting our domestic economy? And really just some of the green shoots that should give us confidence, whether it's from a household perspective or from a commercial or business perspective. But first of all, congratulations on the 10th anniversary. I understand the organization has recently turned 10. Talk to us about the economic landscape 10 years back and today. How has it changed, if at all?
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Thank you for the well wishes. It's really an honor and a privilege to have made it to 10 years. We always say that high economic intelligence is the rose that grew from concrete. I think 10 years ago, in January, when I left the Bank of Namibia to go start this research outfit, the landscape was starkly different from what it is today in terms of research being accepted as an area of work that's needed for developing economy. At the global stage, research is a big thing. It has always been. In Namibia, it took a bit of time. Remember that the majority of research houses are based in South Africa, and they predominantly service the financial services and the research that usually get used here. I think previously you knew that we had NEPRU. We also had IPPR, which still continues, not strictly into the economic and financial services. But generally, I think what Namibia looked like 10 years ago and what it looked like today has changed considerably. Yeah. Today, I think there's greater appreciation for research. I mean, if you know the discoveries of oil, some of the decisions that has been made, I think requires that there should be research now being done. Remember what happened to the Peugeot plant, remember to some of the SACU receipts and whether it was good to take a counter-cyclical or pro-cyclical approach to fiscal policy. Again, research. When I say research, really research externally, not necessarily always from internally. So where we are today, I think we've grown in leaps and bounds, and the industry is also growing in leaps and bounds. We are privileged to have been part of that growth, and I think there's more focus on economic indicators, economic variables. I think also generally there's now greater appreciation for monetary policy decisions, what's going on in inflation, in terms of how that impacts households, because everyone can essentially feel the pinch. I mean, in this decade, we have also seen the biggest disruption in human existence. I mean, we have seen contractions that have not been seen, even worse than World War II in terms of economic variables through COVID. So a lot has changed, and there's been quite a shift in global economic dynamics. Yeah. So from where we are as Hei or as High Economic Intelligence, we are well versed to really be part of the next decade as we remain at the cutting edge of new ideas and continuously track global, continental and domestic trends.
Yeah. From a digitalization point of view, how has the financial space evolved? How would you summarize that?
Well, I think it has evolved considerably. Remember that 10 years ago, if you think of the revenue stream that e-wallet has created, as for instance through the financial institutions, and where we were, I think there was the financial sector strategy, that the 10-year action plan from I think 2012 to 2022, no, to 2022, the 10-year action plan of financial sector strategy So what then happened is that if you look at that strategy, you don't necessarily see digitalization being a big component of at the time. But if you fast track to where we are today, you realize very quickly that you cannot have financial services without digitalization. It's entrenched. We are highly reliant on technology as a basis for transmission of or transactions. So it's deeply embedded, that you can't have the one without the other, and I think it will be even further entrenched going forward.
Yeah.
So if you look at some of the developments around the SIM registration and the potential impact it can have on the financial sector and the general functioning of the economy, it tells you how digitalized we have become as an economy.
Of course, with digitalization, there's always the threats that looms. Perhaps from a research point of view, as far as digital security is concerned, what are the trends that we could look forward to?
Well, I think the regulatory framework needs to constantly evolve to be able to move with developments, because you know that we have now crypto has come in a big way to the fore. And there's also the central digitalized currencies from the central banks, and those are all these developments. And with those new developments, I think there's a greater emphasis on regulatory framework being able to remain at the forefront of some of these developments. Remember that the previous financial financial crisis of 2008 brought about what we now know as the twin peak prudential regulation, which meant that you have to look at stability, but also at stability and sustainability of the sector, right, from a regulatory perspective. So where we are today, we have to make sure that some of the currencies, some of the new developments around medium of exchange or mode of exchange through this digitalization, it has to be kept in check with regulatory framework to avoid what we would potentially turn into other criminality, scams, and subsequently the most vulnerable being affected, because every opportunity presents itself as perhaps a way to escape poverty. Yeah. So the FIC is doing a lot of work in that respect. There's a lot of development that the central bank is trying to make sure that Namibia as a country is not left behind in this respect. So it's important that as new developments around new technology, new medium of exchanges, new mode of transactions come into play, in this highly sophisticated financial system, the regulatory framework safeguard both the system, the financial system, but also the participants, which is businesses and households.
Yeah. But from a policy and perhaps a regulatory framework point of view, do you see us moving fast enough to keep up with the digital trends as far as digital banking is concerned?
Yeah. So remember that you can only deal with what you have, right? So is our network infrastructure sufficient to be able to one, counter, but at the same time evolve with the global trends in terms of where we are? I mean, I think, for instance, in a very perhaps superficial example, if it were, is that we've been tapping your debit card maybe for the past 2 to 3 years. This particular function has been in advanced economies for well over 10 years. So this and given the network infrastructure, what it can carry, because some of these transactions or some of these sophisticated capabilities have to be supported by the network infrastructure. So I think as a developing economy we are doing well. As an emerging market, there's definitely room for further growth, because there's a lot of opportunities that comes with advancement of infrastructure, advancement of systems, and I think relatively we have not fallen too far behind.
Yeah. I'm glad that we have you in studio, and the fact that you can also wear the hat of the NSA, the statistics agency of the country, as the chairperson of that board. Would you say, holistically as a system, do all components speak to each other? It doesn't help. We want to progress in the fiscal sector, but in terms of network or infrastructure, we are not moving in the space. Do you see the system talking to each other from all angles?
Yeah, well, I think there are isolated cases that can definitely be improved, right? But I'm also proud to be associated with the NSA, because I think for the first time in the history of the census in Namibia, we had a digitally enabled census, right? Digitally enabled to the extent that we were able to link location to statistics. We were able to be able to account for structures digitally enabled. So these are all part of the developments that we want to see. Digitalization is a big component of the strategic plan of the NSA. Remember that ideally what you want is you want to make sure that planning and policy interventions are informed by statistics. And as part of digitalizing the NSA, or digitization of the NSA work, will go a long way in making sure that at a policy level, at a planning level, all of these interventions are then synchronized. So it's not going to be an overnight success, but I think to a large extent the work has started, and we are really moving towards a fully digitalized environment where technology needs to become the order of the day. But you also need to make sure that you don't create on the one side technology that will not be able to speak to the skill set, that will be able to speak to the physical infrastructure that you are talking about. Remember that we had the whole 5G spectrum opportunity that was consistently re-advertised until I think towards the end of last year, where it was now allocated. So we'll have the rollout on that particular network infrastructure to support a technology-enabled world, if you do.
Okay. Well, we'll head for a short break, and then we'll be back to continue this conversation. To our viewers, we'll head for a short break. We'll be back with this conversation.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouth-watering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
Welcome back from that break. Mr. Hei, perhaps from a global perspective, what is it that our economy should be gearing up for during the course of this year? What do you think are some of the aspects we should ready ourselves for?
Okay. So 2020 to 2030 was globally termed as the transformative decade, right? And I don't think that we have actually transformed the global economy in a way that we would have wanted to. I think if you look at the growth rates and us being at almost the midpoint of this decade, you realize that our growth rate is at its lowest than at all the other midpoints of the previous decades. We also know that for the third year running, we have global outlook being revised downwards from 2.6 to 2.4 for 2024, right? Obviously, on a more positive note, one can say that we are at a much better place than we were last year as the global economy. In terms of the developing economies, which in the main are really what's going to drive economic activity going forward, because of their huge potential for further growth, because the majority of them remain pre-industrialization. They are forecasted to grow around 3.9%, which is almost 1 percentage point higher than last year. Yeah. So what it means is that there's really been a mixed bag, but I don't think that we have grown to the level that we should have grown at the global, if you look at it in context, in terms of what has been termed the transformative decade. So in that respect, you also see that developing economies are constantly or consistently going to pay much higher for in terms of the cost of borrowing in the global markets, especially those that have got poor credit ratings and credit records. So there's then a tightening of what we now know as the monetary policy position globally. Inflation has consistently also been on the upside. One would have wanted that to sort of come down, because inflation affect our essential commodities and subsequently livelihoods, and it means that unaffordability becomes an issue. Surprisingly, in terms of the wealth, or in terms of the top 1%ers, they have grown much quicker than one would have wanted to see the inequality coming down, right?
Maybe it begs the question, why is that the case?
Well, I think given the indicators and the scenarios that I've alluded to, with every sort of crisis in terms of the pandemic that we have, there are opportunities. And what happened is that the growth in global billionaires have grown much quicker than reducing the inequalities among the greater masses. So it means that the pharmaceutical period, or rather the pharmaceutical opportunity, or within the health sector, the growth that came as a consequence of these developments around the vaccines. I'm not saying whether the vaccines were right or wrong. The point is that it created billionaires during that process. So obviously in that period also to date, you do see the geopolitical tensions that has come to the fore. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has been with us now for a while, and it appears that even given the developments around the Black Sea, there's going to be no immediate ceasefire soon. Subsequent to that, we have seen the escalation of tensions between Israel and the Palestine, notwithstanding the recently order given by the International Court of Justice. And that has spilled over in some of the other countries like Iran. So what that would mean is that those will again impact the growth prospects of the global economy. So those are the sort of challenges that we are seeing. In terms of Africa or the continent per se, we didn't necessarily have a growth problem over the years, right? What we have is really a governance issue. We've not been able to create a very strong governance framework that will be able to inspire the necessary confidence to be able to, one, industrialize, but also create the right amount of quality investment that needs to come to the continent. You know what's happening now in West Africa in terms of some of the countries now exiting the ECOWAS alliance. The geopolitical tensions in that region currently. So that doesn't augur well for growth and where we want to see the continent go. In terms of not too far from home, the ESCOM scenario has not been very good for the growth prospects of the continent. You would know that over the years, South Africa has been the most industrialized country on the continent, but you can't necessarily grow further or expand your industrial base without power. So it's really been a challenge to the South Africa growth prospects. I think coming home to Namibia is that we also did not necessarily have a growth problems, notwithstanding the COVID period, obviously, where we had the deepest contraction post-independence. And then obviously that period pre-COVID where we were also not growing at the rate that we were accustomed to.
Yeah.
The biggest problem in Namibia is really the growth is not necessarily inclusive. We have seen that the Orange Basin is currently the hottest ticket globally. The hottest ticket in the sense that it's attracting quite huge interest, and everyone wants a piece of the Orange Basin. What that means is that the south will become an area of interest of growth for the Namibian economy. You will see towns like Lutritz really taking up a big component of our thriving tourism sector. You'll also see huge development coming to that particular town because of the Orange Basin activities and the oil discoveries.
Yeah.
We know that the appraisals are not yet out,
Yeah.
but the news that constantly coming out of there is that it's positive, and at a policy level we've not really been able to define what the local content is.
Yeah.
We've not been able to define what will accrue to the Namibian economy or to the Namibian beneficiation to the previously disadvantaged, if it were, or to the locals. So those are some of the grey areas that one would have wanted to have been dealt with already, because you do lose a certain bargaining power or bargaining chip, if it were, if you don't have this in advance. In terms of the gas scenario, we have noted that Kudu could potentially be coming back in terms of the investment. We have also seen that some of our yields currently are outperforming the South African yields. I think the bigger concern is we perhaps don't have sufficient or enough investable instruments within the Namibian market to be able to absorb all of the investor monies, if it were to come to Namibia. We would want to see the bond market in Namibia becoming deeper, to deepen the capital markets and be able to attract more investable products on the NSX, or rather bring about. So Namibia is at a place where it has never been before in terms of the investment appetite. If you look at the medium-term expenditure statement that was given by the minister, you realize that our revenue collection has also improved. And 2024 is an election year. And with election years, usually you do see a bit of fiscal expansion. And given the revenue position that we are in, and given that one of the terms that the minister used in the medium-term review was not necessarily fiscal consolidation, but was fiscal sustainability. So I think that you could see a bit of a room where you will see fiscal expansion, especially on the capital budget side, given the nature of the year. So we are gearing ourselves up for a very busy economic year in Namibia because of the indicators look much better, notwithstanding the high interest rates, which obviously impact businesses and households, and still the alleviated position of inflation. But I think there's going to be a lot of economic activity. There's going to be, we do anticipate that there's going to be a bit of fiscal expansion, given the elections that's coming, and how that usually accompany greater spending on public finance.
Well, Mr. Hei, thank you very much for your input this evening. We hope it's going to be a very busy and productive year for the economy overall. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, to our viewers, that is from the Evening Review team. Thank you for staying tuned. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place.